Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Happy to have you with us for the first edition of 3 Questions to Better Business, how you can improve your business. And I can't think of a better person to start the year off than my friend Ed Tate. Ed has a terrific introduction. I'm skipping that, and I'm going to talk about very quickly my experience with Ed. Ed and I met 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I knew of Ed because he is the 2000 world champion of public speaking from Toastmasters International. But more than that, he is a certified speaking professional. He's one of the best speakers in the world, one of the best trainers in the world. He's a fantastic facilitator. If you ever have to do a virtual conference and need people to get up and be interactive and dance, Ed's your guy. But even better, he's a great dad, great husband, great friend to so many people. Ed, it is so good to see you, my friend.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having me on your show. This is what the first episode, is that correct?
First episode of the year. I did several
first episode of the year. All right, cool.
Episode 2022.
I'm kicking off the new year. Well, thank you for having me as your first guest on your show.
My pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, and the specific reason I wanted you, as I mentioned to you before we went live, is 6 years ago, I saw you at a Stage Time event. And you gave this presentation about proposals that blew me away. I'm like, that is how you put together a proposal. So I thought we'd just spend a few minutes today talking about proposals. What specifically makes a good proposal? How can you create a winning proposal every time? So I'm going to start with the first question, which is, what's the biggest challenge to creating a winning proposal?
Great question. And I just had this conversation this morning with a gentleman by the name of Chris West. I coach a lot of people, and a lot of my coaching clients, they have this bad habit. They do something called, they show up and they throw up. And what I mean by that is they meet with a customer, they meet with a client, and they're kind of bragging or boasting about what it is that they do before they've even figured out if there's a fit between them and their client. So one of the things I think, a big challenge is, number one, you have to diagnose before you prescribe. I have a new prospect who I met on Monday. This person has no idea that one of my jobs is I'm a speaker. He thought I was a consultant who specialized in his particular area, his particular industry, based on the questions that I asked. And that's the thing I would invite your listeners and your viewers to have, that type of mindset. Diagnose before you prescribe. Ask them questions. Have questions prepared in terms of, for example, why now? Why now? What happens if we don't do this? What is the cost to your organization, either financially or in terms of your reputation, if nothing happens? What happens if you continue to go on as you are right now? Another thing, again, in terms of diagnosing before you prescribe, is I want you to, in your questions, monetize the problem. So what do I mean by monetizing the problem? What is it costing your organization, this issue, this problem, whatever it is, right now? What is it costing you financially? And also anecdotally, what is it costing you? So it can be actual real hard costs, but there also can be some, again, anecdotal costs. In terms of, like I said before, your reputation, maybe morale. I mean, these things which aren't necessarily measurable. I want to get all that out of the way. I want to understand their problems, their issues, why we're doing this, etc. And also, I'll ask them questions. Are you prepared to do this? Are you just investigating? Are you asking for proposals? Or are you serious about this? Exactly what stage are you in terms of this analysis, if you will? And I also give them a range right up front. I tell them, look, for this particular project, I see this anywhere from $45,000 to possibly up to $100,000. Is that within the range? Because here's something else. I don't want to waste a lot of time. What I've discovered recently is that if I don't give my prospective customer or client a range of what this is going to cost them, it's going to waste time for both of us. So, and I forgot this lesson in the fall of last year. I was working with an individual. It could not have been a better fit. And I forgot my own device. Michael, I showed up and I throwed up. Okay.
Yep, we all guilty of it at times.
And I was working with a vice president who I assumed was a final decision maker. You know what they say when you assume. This turned out not to be the case. I sent him my proposal. He absolutely loved the proposal. And literally on January 2nd, the president canceled it. Now, here's the person. I never spoke with the president. So here's another problem that people have. They're not talking to the correct economic buyer. And the economic buyer is the person who can say yes, and who can say yes. It's he or she who actually owns the budget. There are many people who pretend to be the economic buyer. And these circumstances, the vice president I was dealing with, well, like I said, I assumed based on his title and his experience that he was the economic buyer, but I never asked a question to confirm it. I should have asked a question, in addition to yourself, who else is a part of this project? If we were to shake hands right now, could we begin right away? By the way, the thing I love about that question is people always bring up, oh, well, so-and-so has to go through committee, or this person needs to approve it. And that's how I found out who the economic buyer is. But I should have just basically asked a question, who owns this budget? And I need to hear from his or her own lips what it is they're trying to accomplish. So those are some mistakes that people typically make when dealing with proposals at the beginning.
Okay, and I just wrote down, I love that suggestion. If we were to shake hands right now, or shake hands today, could we begin right away? I've never heard anybody ask that.
Oh, it's a great question.
Yeah.
I love that question. And, I can't take credit for it. One of the resources I'm going to recommend is a gentleman by the name of Alan Weiss. Alan has, if you go to alanweiss.com, I believe he has a version. He has a resource. I think it's only like $25. How to write proposals that win every time. I believe just go to his website, type that up, and it'll come up. It's a great resource. But I got that question from one of his books, and I've been using that one for decades. It flushes out who the real economic buyer is.
One of the things that attracted me to you as a speaker and a presence on stage is your confidence.
Oh, yeah.
And Alan Weiss, that's one of the reasons you like Alan. Alan's very confident too. And I mention that because, my second question, and I'll just show this, but you've already touched upon it, has to do with the biggest mistake. You just covered several mistakes. What's the number one mistake? And correct me if you think I'm wrong on this. I'm fine. I've been wrong lots of times, especially today. If it happens. I think the biggest mistake people make is they try to use the proposal in place of asking tough questions. I'm going to write up a proposal and send it to you, and I hope you'll buy, but I have no idea what your problem is. Would that be a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. A proposal is a summation of objectives that you and the economic buyer have agreed to. I'm going to repeat that again. A proposal is a summation of the objectives, values, and measures that you and the economic buyer have agreed to. That's all a proposal is. Everything else is a waste of time. It's a summary. It's not a selling document. It's not an inquiry type of document. By the way, no one has time to read long proposals nowadays. Now, really quickly, Michael, I used to work in technology. And I began my career, this is many moons ago. This is like when the Earth's crust was still cooling. Okay, so this was before there was actual PCs. I used to work for a company. We sold something called dedicated word processors. Our proposals were over 300 pages. Over 300 pages.
Sounds like some of the speakers we worked with.
Yeah. By the way, no one's going to read those. No one's going to read those. Right now, nowadays, for example, like if you're just, we're talking about speakers here. If you're doing a speech, 1 page. If you're doing a speech and some other things that problems you want them to solve, 2.5 pages is a maximum. But it's a summary of what you have discovered. It's a summary of their questions. It is a summary of the problems that you have talked about And they've given you, again, measures in terms of how we're going to measure this. How will we know if we're successful if we tripped over it? So measures, and also value. Again, value is monetizing the problem. What's this going to cost you? So in the proposal, um, I think I told you this example before. I did a proposal recently for one of my, in conjunction with one of my coaching clients, for an architectural firm. They had 10 new architects who were losing 3 out of 4 deals. An average deal was $180,000. This was an interior architectural firm. Okay. And some of their opportunities went up to 3.2 million. And I got the economic buyer to say, well, what's this costing you? Well, this is costing us like, $4 or $5 million a year, not lost opportunities. I said, okay, let's be conservative. Let's be ultra conservative. Would you agree with me that at the very least it's costing you $1 million? And he said, yes. He says, but it's actually costing us more than that. I said, okay, I just want to be super conservative. I've just monetized the problem. Wow. So now it's costing him $1 million in lost business and revenue. Now my proposal, which was for $140,000, $75,000, and $49,000. Guess what? Will you pay me $140,000 if I can stop $1 million problem? And the answer is all day long.
All day long.
This is why it is critical for you to monetize the problem. What's it costing your prospect? What's it costing your customer, your client, etc.? And use their own words. Use their own words as opposed to, you speculating as to what it would be. Because if you speculate, or if you make up numbers or bring in reports from someplace else and they didn't buy into it, they're not going to buy into your proposal.
Yeah. What I like about that story, and to follow up what you just said, is he gave you a number and you pulled back on the number and then had him confirm, yes, this makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think when we're insecure or we're intimidated by the situation, we might throw a number out and then hope they don't discount it, and then we'll throw it in the proposal, and gosh, when they read it, I hope they buy. It doesn't work. Our mutual friend David Newman taught me to ask the question, can you put a number on it? And don't take your foot off that pedal until they give you a number.
And David Newman, another, I hope you've had him on your show, because he's another great mind.
I will. Yeah. I haven't yet, but I will. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have one of our viewers, Matt, ask, what type of consulting do you do, Ed? And who are your customers?
It is evolved. So I help individuals and organizations win high stakes presentations. Basically, I am in the proposal winning business, if you will. And what do I mean? What do I mean by that? So in this case, the architectural firm, I work with an engineering firm that they worked on the Alaska pipeline, et cetera. And they had, they're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. And the one thing I noticed about their proposals, again, very lengthy, very technical, very, very technical. And they were frustrated with the fact that they were, again, their win ratio was very, very low. So there's a couple of things that I help them with, and that is to, I used to work for the Denver Rocky Mountain News. And the one thing that if you're a newspaper reporter that's criminal, it is to bury the lead. Okay. You never want to bury the lead. Well, what this engineering firm was doing, they were burying the lead. They were, for example, it was like on page 40 that they had a $500 million project they were successful with, and another $240 million project, and a $150 million project. They had these huge projects, which were on page 40 of their proposal. It was buried. Yeah. So in this particular case, what we did is, for this particular client, because they were making actual formal presentations, is we began with the lead. Some of our best customers, we want to share with you some results that people have gotten by working with us. And they just listed example number 1, example number 2, example number 3. I was there at that presentation, and you could see the eyes of the individuals going, oh my, their jaws were dropping, etc. Needless to say, they've been winning business ever since.
There you go. And so you work with different industries. There's not one specific type of group or industry you work with.
If you have, for example, when I used to work in high tech, there was always you always had to give a pitch to the committee, to the CEO, the CFO, whoever that may be. That's my area of expertise. That's that sweet spot. I'm really, really good when it's time for you to present your idea, and it's a win or go home scenario. That is, you got one shot, you got one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one chance. I can help you with that, with those opportunities.
So in other words, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, this is the shot. Kobe, this is the shot.
It's the shot. Exactly.
It's got to be a 3-pointer.
There you go.
Two ain't going to win it.
And there's no time left on the clock.
Yeah. The clock is between 1 and 0. It's literally that half second. That shot's got to be out of your hand. That's it right there.
Absolutely. And by the way, I love those environments. I love that. I kind of thrive on that. So to me, it's fun.
And little known secret, well, it is within our group, a little known secret about you winning the World Championship of Public Speaking. You talk about getting it under the gun. If you're not familiar with Toastmasters and their competition, you have 7 minutes and 30 seconds. If you go 1 second over, you're done. Ed Tate's winning time, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, 7 minutes, 30 seconds.
Well, I was approached by, and by the way, I thought I'd gone overtime to be perfectly frank, because when I rehearsed my speech, it was 6 minutes and 10 seconds. However, when I was in front of this audience of 2,500 people, they laughed in places they'd never laughed before. They laughed longer than they had ever laughed before. In fact, historically, there's a book that says my speech is among the funniest of all time. And I saw the green light, which means that, get ready to wrap this thing up. I never saw the yellow light, and all of a sudden the red light was on. And the red light means is you got 30 seconds. The problem is I didn't know how long the red light had been on, and I had more than 30 seconds of material. So I made a mental gyration, and I concluded my speech in a natural position that people felt like, hey, that's where the speech was supposed to end. And I had the official timers walk up to me. They weren't supposed to do this. One person walked up to me, and it had a piece of paper, and it said 7:30. I said, "What's this?" He says, "This is your official time." And the other timer says, "I had you at 7:29." So had I sneezed, I probably wouldn't be a guest on your show today, Michael.
Well, I don't want to get into Toastmasters talk here, but we also teach people all the time, don't do what everybody else does. And there is a technique, if you will, in Toastmasters that everybody uses. And that's somewhere along in the beginning, you say, Mr. Toastmaster, Mr. Contest Chair, ladies and gentlemen. You didn't do that. And I tell people all the time, if you had, you would have been done.
Nope.
So don't do what everybody else does.
Exactly. And I saw that just as a waste of words. And in that particular case, I definitely would have been disqualified.
Absolutely. So, and this is fantastic. I have one other question for you, and you've given us so many nuggets already, but here's the third question. Mm-hmm. What one insider secret will help me stand out for my competitors on my proposals?
Oh, I have a few there. Here's one thing I did this week. Now, a lot of people are Zoom exhausted, Zoom frustrated. I love Zoom. I absolutely love Zoom, especially in the prospecting part or the early stages of a sales opportunity. The client on Monday told me the following. He said, number one, he says, I really appreciate that the fact that you actually got on Zoom with me. He says, the other people, you know what they did? They sent me links to their websites, or they sent me PDFs in the email. You're the only person who wanted to talk about this. And I said, that's my preference. Now, here's a secret. Number one, if you can get your prospect on Zoom, do that. If you can meet them in person, in this, World Global Health Organization, and they're willing to do that, and you're willing to do it, go at it. I like meeting people in person, or I like being able to see their face. I can see their face. For example, when I told that gentleman what the price range was, he didn't seem fazed by it. He didn't seem, it didn't seem to bother him in terms of what my fees were. So I'd like to be able to read that individual, read that person. The other thing is, when you're having a conversation with someone, you get insider information. Yes. So in this particular case, as we're closing up the call, he says, again, I'm so glad that we got on Zoom. He says, all these other people wanted me to type all this stuff up. And he says, number one, I'm not going to type all these things up. And number two, there's so many things that came up in this conversation that I hadn't even thought about. Here's something else. He's met Ed. Now we've got a relationship. I've got a heads up on my competition who sent something via email, who sent a PDF, etc. I'm going to send him a draft proposal. So I want him to review the proposal and go over everything that we've discussed. If I'm off base, I'll make some corrections. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to send him a final proposal. The process I've just described to you is I'm going to meet with this particular prospective client 3 times. And with each time, I'm actually building relationship. And I'm also getting a heads up on my competition. So my number one secret is to meet with, your customer and your client, either in person or in Zoom, as many times as you possibly can. With each opportunity you meet them, you're building a relationship. You're learning more. For example, when I present this proposal next week, we're going to have more of a conversation. I'm going to learn more about this particular opportunity. There is an economic buyer who was not available for our first call, but he will be available for our future calls. And I'm going to get a chance to meet that individual. On top of everything else, I was referred by an executive inside the organization. So what I'm doing is I'm also keeping that person posted on, hey, how things have gone. I says, hey, I want to thank you for recommending me, etc. So I'm building relationships throughout the entire organizations. Proposals are one based on relationships, not necessarily your cost or your fees. I am not cheap. I am not, no disrespect to Walmart. I'm not Walmart. I'm Nordstrom's. Mm-hmm. I'm wearing a Nordstrom shirt. Okay. And that's my mindset, So I hope I answered your question there.
You absolutely did. And I just got an idea because there's something I've been keeping on my desk for a couple of years. It was inspired by our mutual friend, Jennifer Leone. Oh, she is a master at digging for what we call the heart and soul. We love to joke that she is the master at digging into you, pulling out your heart and making you cry. She's so good. But because of her, I keep this golden shovel on my desk.
Okay, nice.
I'm going to award. Now, this is more of a virtual award, Ed. You're going to get the first virtual golden shovel award. Woo-hoo! Because big deal. I just thought of this because you are a master at digging. And this is why when I said earlier, and I wasn't joking, you are a confident person. You've got to have the confidence to verbally stand up to somebody when it's in their best interest to dig for the pain, which often leads to that number you've been talking about.
And the reason I do that is, again, my proposals are, by the way, here's another resource for your listeners, Value-Based Fees by Alan Weiss. Yeah. My fees are based on value. They're not based on time. I never charge based on time, billing, X number of dollars per hour, which is like, in my opinion, one of the worst billing models ever. Yeah. Because psychologically, people think that the meter is running like in a taxi cab. Now, for the younger people, before there was this thing called Uber, there used to be taxi cabs, okay? And they used to have these meters, and, every second or every mile, those meters would run. Well, when you're charging by the hour, the meter is running. Whereas if I give, in this case, the architects, we gave them a flat fee. We said, hey, this is how much it's going to cost. There'll be no additional expenses beyond this particular point. And they absolutely loved it. My clients love the fact that they get one fee only. And, it's based on value.
And they have access to you throughout the terms of the agreement, and they're not sweating. Oh my gosh, is he going to run the bill up? You're not like an attorney. Alan, I read that years ago in Alan's book, Value-Based Fees, and I thought that is brilliant. And I realized between that, and I think you're the one who turned me on to Alan's work as far as writing proposals. And you definitely changed my world 6 years ago when I heard you talk about those proposals and base it on value and don't use it as a sales tool. Have the difficult conversation, difficult for them because they're the one who are in pain. You're there to help. And it changed how my proposals were written, and the win ratio went up, and it was really a lot because of you. So I'm always appreciative of that, and that's why I wanted you on today.
Thank you. Hey, and here's the thing, something you just made me think of.
Mm-hmm.
Have the hard part up front.
Yeah.
Do the hard work up front. If you do the hard work up front, by the time you give that economic buyer the proposal, you are literally, I write down the probability of this deal being done for every single proposal is 75% at that point in time. This is when they request a proposal, because I've done the hard work on the front end. And then from that, and after they've reviewed the proposal, you have a conversation with them. It's smooth sailing in terms of you closing the business. There may be other things that come up that you can't foresee. For example, like a pandemic and things of that nature. And sometimes things may change. But for the most part, when I've gone through the process I've just described to you, and I have that conversation with that economic buyer, my close ratio is 75% at a minimum, and typically it's in the 80s and the 90 percentile.
There you go. Huge numbers. And the other thing that real quick, Matt just asked, will the replay be available? Yes, it'll be available tomorrow, Matt. And it's definitely easier to read someone face-to-face versus Zoom. It is, but as Ed has pointed out, it's a lot better to have them on camera than on a phone.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Our very dear mutual friend, Darren, back in 2017, when he said, I want you to host my weekly Zoom calls. And I was resistant. Because I hadn't done it before, Ed, and I was afraid I was going to embarrass I was really going to embarrass the brand. And being a good mentor, he kept pushing me in the deep end of the pool. And thank goodness when 2020 hit, I knew that most people were going to be so reluctant because they told me they didn't want to do virtual. Well, you got to do it now, folks. And it made all the difference. And having that comfort level being on Zoom, as you've talked about, is huge, because you just have a conversation like you always have. You're just doing it over a camera, but you're a lot more able to read that than you are a phone.
Well, here's the other thing the story you just told, there's a valuable lesson for your listeners with regard to proposals. Push yourself, make yourself uncomfortable, have those, uncomfortable fees, if you will. One of the things I typically do is I give my clients 3 options. I just don't, if you listen to the architectural story, we gave them 3 different options. We gave them 3 different choices in how they could work with us, and that's what, I would invite you to do, but to push yourself, to challenge yourself, to ask for more money. Well, I've coached hundreds of speakers and also small business individuals, owners, who are trying to grow their businesses. And I would say the vast majority of them, we're having conversations about them not charging enough. Yeah. I would say that's probably the number one thing I discuss with them. And you say that, I have confidence. And this has been built up over time. I wasn't born this way. Right. I am, if you take an assessment, I'm technically an introvert. But this is something I'm really, really good at. This is one of my superpowers. And this is something that, I want your listeners to have the same mindset when they're presenting their proposal, that the problem that I solve, this is my superpower, and have that confidence. That's where the confidence comes from. I'm not the, CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I'm never going to pretend to be. However, I've had several CEOs from Fortune 500 companies hire me to help them on coaching. Guess what? That is my superpower. Jimmy Fallon has a new show called That's My Jam. Mm-hmm. That's my jam.
It's your jam.
And the lesson for your listeners and your viewers is to have that mindset. That's my jam. This is what I do well. That's where the confidence comes from. So carry that confidence that you have about yourself, whatever your superpower is. Take that into the proposal. Take that into the pre-conference calls. Take that into the closing.
Well, and along those lines, David Newman gave me this about 2 years ago. Said, write this, put it on your desk, and look at it every day. I charge more because I'm worth more. I'm worth more because I charge more. It does help your mindset. And I want to go back to when I heard you talk 6 years ago about proposals. You suggested something to us in the audience that day that I thought, man, that's going to be hard to do. And that is to tell people, I am expensive. And I'll never forget, Ed, the first time I did it, I was like, all right, here goes. I'm expensive. Oh God, here comes. And they said, okay. And I realized that the word expensive is too vague for them. And I don't mean this in a negative way. It's so vague to them. They may be thinking, is he going to hit me with $100,000 fee or 20? It lets them play. And then when typically we come back with a number that's smaller than they expect, and you can see the relief, like, oh, I can do that.
Well, I've got a coach who I'm working with right now. And she gave me a very, very valuable lesson. So I'm confident. I typically don't undercharge. I'm fairly comfortable with fees. But she has this aphorism. The aphorism is, never assume what a prospect or a client can afford to pay. Never assume. And I learned this the hard way. So I attended this online program during the pandemic. I signed up for numerous courses, during the pandemic just to improve my skills. And one of the courses, they assigned you with an accountability buddy. So my accountability buddy, he's actually lives in Australia, and young guy, early 30s, just had left his job. So therefore he's unemployed. He's just about to get married, etc. And, he had hinted that he might want to work with me, but I said, like, well, if this guy is, he just lost his job and he's about to get married, so he can't afford me. Later on, I would discover that he signed up for Tony Robinson's, I forgot what it's called, his elite program, $85,000. $85,000. And I was stunned. I was shocked. And I asked him, I said, and your wife still married you? Because he made this purchase without checking with her.
Wow.
But it was a lesson to me. It was a reminder to myself. I should never assume what someone can afford to pay.
Never. And you we'll wrap up with this because I appreciate your time today. I think we are all guilty of getting into a comfort zone. I teach this all the time to speakers, that our job is to push our audiences out of their comfort zone or else they won't act. We make proposals, and in making the assumption also gets us into a comfort zone. We get comfortable with a certain type of personality type, or we hear a few facts about their situation. So we're comfortable thinking, well, I know this guy's situation, he won't buy. So we never stop learning, do we, Ed?
No. And we're still accountability buddies. We still check in with each other once a month. And I told him, I says, hey, I'm going to turn you into a story. I says, I'm going to earn this 85 grand back through this story that I tell.
Hey, I do have one bonus question for you, and it all comes from my world of storytelling and storytelling consulting. Is it effective to use stories in a proposal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You one of your questions earlier was, what's going to separate you from the pack? Tell stories. Tell stories. Here's a little formula for you. You can use what I call the PAR. For those of you who are golfers, you can use the PAR acronym. And for those of you who like automobiles, you can use the CAR acronym. PAR stands for problems, action taken, and results. So tell a story, for example, in terms of your testimonials. Here's a problem that XYZ company was facing, very similar to yours. Here's the action that they took, and here's the results that they achieved. The CAR formula is, here are the concerns that they face, here are the actions that they took, and here are the results. But tell a story in that separates you. It's not about a data dump.
Right.
People justify analytically, but they buy emotionally. And stories, as you know, they elicit emotion. By the way, there is no story unless there is emotion. So this is why I dive in deep. This is why, ladies and gentlemen, I am the first, golden shovel winner of the year.
There you go. I mean, come on. Out of all your accolades, Ed, that's going to go right up on your shelf. I know.
But I want to dive in deep because I want to find the emotion.
Yeah.
I don't want to find the analytical. Everyone can respond to the analytical. I need to dig for the emotion. What's this costing you? What are the frustrations? What is, what's keeping the organization up at night? What are the executive team talking about on a regular basis? What is the CEO frustrated? Like, I'm so tired of this. Why don't we fix, that's the good stuff.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And we have to use that language with them. What are you sick and tired of dealing with? What is making you sick to your stomach, giving you, making you take the Pepto-Bismol is an old term, Alka-Seltzer? What is it that you can't take anymore that is just driving you nuts? That's what I'm here to help you with. That's it.
Yep. Absolutely.
So Ed, how can people take a deeper dive with you? I've got your email address.
Well, my website is edtate.com. So just, go there, reach out, and, there's a little window that says contact us, and we'll respond. We'll reply. I have a team who their job is to make sure that we get those messages.
Yeah, and you've helped me before. You're very easy to work with. You are a wealth of information. I appreciate you. I will tell our viewers also, if you want to do a deeper dive into storytelling, don't forget you can get the 52 storytelling tips. This is a weekly 5-minute audio that comes right to your email box. The whole idea behind this is slow, steady growth with your storytelling skills. If you want to sign up for those, go to my virtual business card. It's infone.co, not .com.co/speakingcpr. You'll be taken to this page. Just click on the 52 storytelling tips button. That will take you and help you register for those tips. Join us next week, coming soon to a live stream near you. Stephanie Selasic will talk to us about why emotional control is more important in business than ever before, with a fairly tumultuous world we live in. I think that would be very helpful. So
yes, it would.
Ed, again, thank you for being the first one this year. Congratulations. Thought of it on the spot, the Golden Shovel Award. I mean, come on. It is award season anyway.
I'm going to add that to my accolades on my website.
Yeah, I'm going to use that at your introduction at Game Changers.
Exactly.
Yeah, you may think he's just the CSP and just the world champion, but let me tell you,
I got to go to the award.
Ed, you're awesome. Love you. Look forward to talking with you soon. Hopefully we'll see each other in a couple months at Game Changers in Las Vegas. And
hopefully so. Exactly.
Appreciate you so much for your wisdom, and hope this is the best year you've ever had.
So far, this year, it has been absolutely amazing. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thank you, my friend.